working to connect a region of over 600 cultural bridges between our lands.
I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching ASEAN in Focus on tonight's headlines. In a late-night move, President Marcos extended congratulations to Lai Ching-te on his victory in Taiwan's presidential election. And this diplomatic gesture comes amid rising tensions in the region. The Philippines is sending a clear message to China with plans to upgrade military outposts and bolster its naval presence in the disputed waters. And this comes as China's assertiveness in the region continues to spark concerns. The Arakan Army, an armed ethnic group in Myanmar, claims to have captured a town and several military outposts near the borders with Bangladesh and India. This development raises concerns about escalating conflict in the region. The World Economic Forum's annual Global Risks Report highlights misinformation and disinformation as the top threat facing the world, followed closely by extreme weather events. Leaders in Davos are calling for urgent action to address these critical challenges. President Marcos late Monday evening congratulated Lai Ching-te on his election as Taiwan's next president. China's Foreign Affairs Ministry also warned countries against supporting Taiwan's Democratic Progressive Party, or DPP, and condemned those that congratulated Lai. On behalf of the Filipino people, I congratulate President-elect Lai Ching-te on his election as Taiwan's next president. According to Marcos, we look forward to close collaboration, strengthening mutual interests, fostering peace, and ensuring prosperity for our peoples in the years ahead. Lai, who retweeted Mr. Marcos's post, thanked the Philippine leader for his congratulatory message. In a post, I deeply value the enduring friendship between Taiwan and the Philippines, and I look forward to enhancing our economic and people-to-people ties while championing democracy, peace, and prosperity in the region. Prior to President Marcos' comments, the Department of Foreign Affairs issued a statement on Sunday reiterating the Philippines' adherence to the One China policy. And this policy recognizes Taiwan as an inseparable part of China and Beijing as the legitimate government. The statement also comes amidst ongoing tensions between Manila and Beijing concerning the disputed territories in the West Philippine Sea. Meanwhile, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning held a press conference.
The remarks of the Philippine side of the Philippine president gravely violate the One China principle, and the communique on the establishment of diplomatic relations go against the Philippines' political commitments to China and interfere in China's internal affairs. China strongly deplores and firmly opposes this and has immediately lodged strong representations. This morning, Assistant Foreign Minister Nauru summoned the Philippine ambassador to China to lodge serious statement and urged the Philippines to present a responsible response to China. The election results of the Taiwan region cannot change the dynamics and direction of cross-strait relations and cannot hold back the prevailing trend that China will and must achieve reunification. We would like to tell the Philippines not to play fire on the Taiwan question, abide by the One China principle and joint communique, stop wrong words and deeds, and stop sending any wrong signal to Taiwan independence separatist forces. We suggest President Marcos will read more to have a correct understanding of the history of the Taiwan question and reach a right conclusion.
Taiwan's newly elected President Lai Ching-te is facing a complex diplomatic landscape. While celebrating a visit from a U.S. delegation, he also grapples with the loss of a diplomatic ally and China's strong opposition. Lai held a solid partnership with the U.S., represented by the unofficial delegation sent by President Biden. And this comes despite China's firm opposition to any official exchanges between the U.S. and Taiwan. Beijing views Taiwan as part of its territory and opposes any move towards independence. Just days after the election, Pacific nation Nauru switched allegiance from Taiwan to China. This means only 12 nations now formally recognize Taiwan, a blow to Lai's new administration. Taiwan accused China of using economic incentives to influence Nauru's decision.
中国积极地接触诺鲁的政要，利用经济援助，诱使该国外交转向。这个期间，前总统昆洛斯访台。
Lai reaffirmed Taiwan's commitment to freedom and democracy, shared values with the U.S. He emphasized the importance of strong U.S. support for Taiwan's stability.
我在我大选后立即发表祝贺声明，并派遣重量级跨党派代表来台，向我景美琴表达祝贺，充分展现美国对台湾民主的强劲支持，凸显台美紧密坚实的伙伴关系，对台湾意义重大。
China, however, reiterated its claim over Taiwan and insists that the election doesn't change its status.
It's reported that the Taiwan authorities yesterday accused the mainland of long-term suppression of the island's diplomatic space and alluring Taiwan's diplomatic allies. What's your comment? There is but one China in the world. The government of the People's Republic of China is the sole legal government representing the whole of China, and Taiwan is an inalienable part of China's territory. Standing up for the One China principle is the right thing to do and is where global opinion trends and where the arc of history bends. We are convinced that more countries will choose to stand on the right side of history and international justice and make the right decision that serves the fundamental and long-term interests of their countries and peoples. I want to stress that the One China principle is a basic norm governing international relations and a prevailing consensus of the international community. The Chinese government never barters away principles. The DPP goes against the prevailing trend of history, refuse the One China principle, and make every effort to expand the so-called international space, are doomed to failure and will lead nowhere.
Now, Taiwan's election results are setting off shockwaves across the region. Lai Ching-te's victory for the DPP marks a historic third term and fuels concerns about rising tensions with China. But analysts see new opportunities amidst the uncertainty.
So DPP's position has always been that it's willing to engage in political dialogue with Beijing. That, I think, will not change even under Lai Ching-te's presidency. So the question for Beijing is always dialogue on whose terms.
Despite Lai Ching-te's pro-independence leanings, experts like Sung Weng-ti of the Atlantic Council believe the DPP remains open to dialogue with Beijing. But the question remains, on whose terms?
Beijing has its own set of political preconditions that they want DPP to satisfy before dialogue can happen between Beijing and DPP government. And at the moment, it seems like when Lai Ching-te come into power as a minority government without even a majority in the parliament, Beijing doesn't have obvious reason why you want to extend an olive branch or soften down on those conditions anytime soon.
Beijing demands concessions from the DPP before talks can begin. With Lai's minority government, analysts foresee little incentive for China to soften its stance to the immediate future. Sang warns of potential escalation in the short term.
I think there will also likely going to be instability in cross-strait relations in the short term. Beijing will likely want to use further pressure, be a military gray zone maneuvers to ratchet tension, or economic sanctions against select Taiwanese exports to the Chinese market, or just further marginalization and critique of Taiwan in both bilateral and potentially multilateral settings, all as a way to exert further pressure against the next Taiwan government, and then also through that to set the terms of interaction for the next 4 years of cross-strait relations between Beijing and Taipei. In the longer term, however, I think it remains to be seen whether the Lai Ching-te administration will show enough acumen when it comes to diplomacy, when it comes to dialogue, to be able to engage Beijing from a position of strength.
This election, in Sung's eyes, highlights the ineffectiveness of China's past attempts to sway Taiwanese voters. Military threats and economic pressure seem to have backfired, paving the way for Lai's victory.
I think that matters to Beijing for sure. And I think if Beijing draws one lesson out of this election, it would be that Beijing really didn't have good, effective tools for influencing electoral outcomes in Taiwan. Military tension, they've been using it for over a quarter century. It's old trick by this point. Economic sanction, Beijing's tried as well, hasn't been all that effective in shaping hearts and minds in Taiwan. And that's why we see this election result, which is that no matter what tricks Beijing may pull in order to try to influence the election outcome, Taiwanese voters still vote back in the very DPP government that Beijing claims he doesn't like.
The United States expressed disappointment after Nauru, a tiny South Pacific nation, broke ties with China, with Taiwan, and recognized China instead. Nauru's move, a blow to Taiwan's dwindling number of allies, bolsters Beijing's growing influence in the region. The U.S. called Taiwan a reliable democratic partner and warned that China's promises of aid often come unfulfilled.
The government of Nauru's action is a sovereign decision. It is nonetheless a disappointing one. PRC often makes promises in exchange for diplomatic relations that ultimately remain unfulfilled.
The U.S. is publicly judging the decision made by an independent sovereign state, smearing China's diplomacy, endorsing Taiwan's expansion of so-called international space, gravely violating the One China principle and the 3 joint communiques between China and the U.S., grossly interfering into China's internal affairs. It's against the basic norms governing international relations. We deplore and reject this. I want to stress that there is but one China. Taiwan is an indivisible part of China's territory. The government of the People's Republic of China is the sole legal government representing the whole of China. One China principle is a basic norm governing international relations and a common consensus accepted by the international community. The Nauru government's decision to resume ties with China has once again shown that the One China principle is where the global opinion trends and the arc of history bends. We urge the U.S. leaders to implement their commitments of not supporting Taiwan independence, not supporting 2 Chinas or One China, One Taiwan, and handle Taiwan question with extreme prudence and stop sending any wrong signals to Taiwan separatist forces.
China claims self-ruled Taiwan as its own territory and vows to one day take it back by force if necessary.
The United States' clear and long-term expectation remains the peaceful resolution of cross-strait differences free from coercion. We oppose unilateral changes to the status quo. We do not support Taiwan independence, and we support cross-strait dialogue.
Nauru's population of 12,500 makes it one of the world's smallest nations, but its strategic location gives its decision significant weight. Both China and Taiwan have been competing for allies in the Pacific, offering aid packages and development assistance. The Philippines is flexing its muscles in the South China Sea. The country's military chief announced plans to upgrade outposts on disputed islands and acquire more ships, sending a clear message to China, whose growing assertiveness in the region has sparked tensions.
We are making these features more habitable for our troops. Kasi may mga tropa po tayo dyan eh. May mga Marines tayo dyan sa area na yan.
T2 and Nanshan Islands, key Philippine outposts, will see improvements like desalination machines and better communication equipment, making them more habitable for troops. The Philippines will acquire more ships and aircraft, adding to its modest modernization program. Despite the upgrades, there's no plan to fortify the grounded ship Sierra Madre, a symbol of Philippine claims in the area. This move comes amidst heightened tensions between the Philippines and China. Both countries conducted military exercises in the South China Sea this month, with tensions rising after a collision between their vessels and a Chinese water cannon incident. 800 million pesos will be used to build a port on Nanshan, providing shelter for fishing boats and other vessels. T2 Island's airstrip will be expanded with a 1.5 billion peso allocation, boosting its strategic importance. In a major development, an armed ethnic group in Myanmar, the Arakan Army, claims to have captured a town and several military outposts near the borders with Bangladesh and India. And this comes as a major setback for the country's embattled military junta, which has been facing mounting resistance since its 2021 coup. The AA says it seized the town of Paletwa in Chin State, along with 6 military bases near the border with India. This strategic location lies close to the Kaladan River, a vital waterway in a New Delhi-backed infrastructure project. The AA released pictures of its fighters outside the town's police station and government offices, claiming control of the entire township, with a population of over 64,000. Independent verification of these claims is currently unavailable. This development also comes just weeks after the AA and other ethnic groups agreed to a ceasefire in northern Shan State, mediated by China. However, the situation in the western Rakhine and Shin states remains volatile, with clashes ongoing. Turning now to headlines beyond the ASEAN region, a record-breaking Arctic blast continues its icy grip across the nation, bringing dangerous wind chills, crippling snowstorms, and disrupted routines from coast to coast. Wind chills plunging 30 degrees below zero from the Rockies to Iowa, testing the resolve of caucus goers in the first in-the-nation presidential contest. Even former President Trump is urging supporters to brave the cold and cast their votes.
You're going to be first in the nation. So brave the weather and go out and save America, because that's what you're doing. This is really about saving our country. No matter how hard they try, it doesn't make any difference. We will never give up. We will never surrender. And in the end, we are going to win, win, win. We're going to win.
The Pittsburgh Steelers versus Buffalo Bills NFL playoff game, originally scheduled for Monday, is now postponed due to the bone-chilling blizzard in Buffalo. The city's governor shared stark footage of near whiteout conditions.
We all know, as Western New Yorkers, how dangerous the triple threat is. The triple threat of icy cold temperature with high winds and the blowing snow, and how dangerous that all can be. It's life-threatening weather. That's exactly what's going on now in the vicinity of where there would have been a football game playing today in Orchard Park and overall throughout the South Towns. So we've been working closely together, and I would say that the forecast of this storm really underestimated the ferocity of this storm. Number one, the volume of snow was predicted to be 1 to 2 inches an hour, which is a lot of snow over a 36 to 40-hour period. But what we've seen since this morning, that the snow bands are staying longer, they're broader, and also we're now seeing in real time 4 to 5, possibly 6 inches an hour in the South Towns in particular. So what we're expecting now over the next couple of hours, the South Towns between now and 5 p.m., that same rate of snow falling 3, 4, 5, 6 inches an hour.
Stressing that only a ceasefire can truly prevent further suffering, UN Chief Guterres highlighted the urgency of creating basic conditions for safe and full-scale aid delivery to civilians in Gaza. Thomas I. Likeness reports.
The shortfalls in humanitarian aid keep growing. The suffering grows as well. Conditions like these are commonplace, where displaced people try to stay warm as the cold seeps through their flimsy tents in refugee camps like this one. UN Chief Antonio Guterres says it's time for both sides to lay down their arms.
We need an immediate humanitarian ceasefire to ensure sufficient aid gets to where it's needed, to facilitate the release of the hostages, to tamp down the flames of wider war.
As the fighting rages on, Guterres says there's a danger in delaying a ceasefire.
Because the longer the conflict in Gaza continues, the greater the risk of escalation and miscalculation.
But his big concern right now is trying to alleviate suffering like this. The war has been going on for more than 100 days now. And in that time, 85% of Gaza's population has been displaced. People have lost their homes, lost their possessions. They're crowded into shelters where it's a struggle to get food, clean drinking water, medical care. And that's something Guterres finds unconscionable.
Nothing can justify the collective punishment of the Palestinian people. The humanitarian situation in Gaza is beyond words. Nowhere and no one is safe.
Food and other essentials are running out. When an aid truck arrives, scenes like this are typical. People rush to get what they can. But tens of thousands of people are left out. Samer Abdel-Jabbar works for the World Food Program. He says people are starving in areas they can't get to Needs are rising faster than his people can respond.
We need safe access to reach people everywhere in Gaza, not just those who are close to the borders. We need a long-lasting ceasefire to stop the suffering.
While Israel faces heavy international pressure over the conditions in Gaza, there seems to be no appetite in the Netanyahu government for a humanitarian ceasefire. Hamas doesn't seem to be interested either. And caught in the middle are the civilians of Gaza. Thomas I. Likeness, Eagle News. We live in extraordinary times.
The World Economic Forum, known for gathering global leaders in Davos, has just released its annual Global Risks Report. And this year, it paints a concerning picture. Let's hear from WEF Managing Director Sadia Zahidi about the top threats we face both now and in the coming decade. Misinformation and disinformation top the list, posing a risk to elections and social stability.
I think as we enter 2024, fairly pessimistic outlook. So in terms of the overall outlook for the next 2 years and the next 10 years, we see that there's a progressive worsening of that outlook. So, we have in the 2-year time frame mis and disinformation as the #1 risk, followed by extreme weather, followed by societal polarization, interstate armed conflict. That's the top 5 in the 2-year outlook. Very closely followed by lack of economic opportunity, inflation, involuntary migration, and economic downturn. And that said, in the 10-year outlook, we are looking very much at climate-related risks as still the #1 concern. So top, extreme weather. Second, concern around critical change to Earth systems. Results speak for themselves. People are deeply concerned. It's the first time we've had that risk explicitly spelled out in the report, and it has jumped to #1 in the 2-year time frame. And it's #2 in the 2024 timeframe. And in the next 2 years, because such a large part of the world is going to be voting, whether it's national elections, local elections, it is a risk that has to be taken seriously. And because the speed with which some of that synthetic content can be created and the fact that it is not tagged or watermarked in many parts of the world, and combine that with the fact that most people are not educated at present as to the risks of some of that synthetically generated mis and disinformation. Together, that's a very potent mix. And throw that on top of a situation where there are already a lot of economic grievances and other things, you're looking at a very difficult combination going into elections.
As my usual habit, I'd like to end the day on a positive note. Let's encourage and build each other up so that no one is left behind. And that's it for tonight's broadcast. I'm Alma Angeles. Stay in the news because we live in extraordinary times. Good night.